We held hearings on the outing of the CIA agent Valerie Plame, and we held hearings about the misleading information, the lies that got us into the war in Iraq. We held hearings to point out that our democracy is based on checks and balances, and the Congress had a responsibility to investigate and to bring out to light what was going on. So we did that. We were talking a little bit ago about the global warming issue. And I have a chapter in my book about the Clean Air Act. That was a battle for 10 years. It started when the Reagan administration and the chairman of my committee, Democrat John Dingell, got together and wanted to gut the Clean Air Act. There we had to fight to stop the legislation. Then I wanted to pass legislation to deal with acid rain and carbon emissions. It took us 10 years before we got to the final passage of the bill. We had to work out compromises. Compromise is not a bad word. It passed overwhelmingly, in fact, in committee unanimously, and it's been the most successful environmental law ever written. It works today to solve the acid rain problem, which was from the Midwestern power plants poisoning the lakes and the forests in the Northeast. It dealt with the toxic pollutants that poison people who live near industrial facilities in West Virginia and other places, and it put a strong effort to force the cleanup in smog-polluted areas, for which I'm very sensitive coming from Los Angeles. Legislation that can do an enormous amount of good for people. Congress does pass it, often on a bipartisan basis, often through compromises, and it positively affects the lives of millions of people. And that's what I wanted to express in this book. People shouldn't be so disillusioned that they don't realize that good things can happen. They also buy into the argument in saying those things that government could do no good. Government is essential in the lives of millions of people to give us opportunities for success. No child has an opportunity if he can't get health care or an education. And then we've got to protect those who need a safety net under them just to respect the dignity of people as human beings.
But on the issue of these private military forces, will you call on Obama now that he's president to end the use of these forces?
Well, I want to find out more about it, but one thing he did as soon as he took office is he stopped the practices of the Bush administration by giving non-competitive contracts, a lot of which went to Halliburton, on a cost-plus reimbursement basis, which encouraged them to raise their costs. And that has now been prohibited both by legislation and by executive action by the Obama administration. It could well be, and I haven't been away from these issues while I've been working on the health care and the environmental policies, because I've become chairman of a different committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, that they couldn't find enough public military troops to do the job, and they are now very carefully scrutinizing any private contractors for military operations. But I still don't like it, and I would think we need not to contract essentials, things like the military operations, to private contractors. We ought to have people whose first loyalty is the United States, not to their contractor.
Staying on the issue of war, Chairman Waxman,
yes.
Staying on that issue, the culpability, the responsibility of the past administration. Yeah. You came to Congress in the wake of Watergate, right before the Church Committee hearings. Now, people like Rush Holt, Congressmember Barbara Lee, and others are talking about convening a special committee to investigate the abuses, everything from war to spying on Americans at home. We just did a big expose on the U.S. Army spying on peace groups right into the Obama administration right now, infiltrating some peace groups up in Washington State, and they have admitted the guy came from Fort Lewis base.
I think that's very important. I support the idea of an independent committee to carry on that investigation. We shouldn't let it lapse and forget that it's just say it's just in the past and we got to focus on the future. If you don't learn from the past and correct those errors and make sure that people who are responsible are held accountable, the past has a way of coming back. We saw that with the repeat of a lot of what went on in Watergate under the Bush administration, the spying on American citizens, the disregard for civil liberties, and we can't fall into a trap of ignoring what went on.
And as chair of the Oversight Committee, you sought to crack down on a lot of this lavish executive pay in the Wall Street bailout. Yeah. We've just seen bonuses for these banks, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, leading in profits in the second quarter. And many executives receiving millions in bonuses. Do you think the Obama administration has handled this well, has cracked down at all on this?
Well, they certainly cracked down some, but I would like to make sure that we really go after the root causes of these problems. And I've been following Paul Krugman's articles where he has said that he doesn't think that the people running the economic policy for this administration are trying to make sure that we don't have the repeat of runaway markets that can abuse the situation. And I've been tremendously offended at these CEO pay deals. They're just not, nobody can be worth the kind of money that they're being awarded, and they're being awarded money after they got us into big troubles in our economy, and after the government taxpayers' dollars have been used to bail them out. So I'm very offended by those bonuses. We did a number of hearings on it when I was chairman of the Oversight Committee, including the fact that there has been a conflict of interest of the people who give advice as to what the executive bonuses should be, because they make more money when they work for the management, the people whose pay they're adjusting in other contracts. Chairman Barney Frank of the Financial Institutions Committee has a bill to ban those kinds of practices, which is clearly, in my view, a conflict of interest.
Last question. It's on Israel and the occupied territories. In our headlines today, Secretary of State Clinton met with Jordan's foreign minister. She criticized Israel for evicting 50 Palestinians from their homes in East Jerusalem, part of a major issue around the issue of settlements. You recently wrote to the Jewish Daily Forward saying they had said you challenged the Israeli prime minister on settlements. You wrote, correcting them, saying, I welcome the prime minister and express support for the continued strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship. I most certainly did not challenge the prime minister on any aspect of Israeli policy, including the settlements. Why aren't you opposing the Israeli government on the issue of the settlements that are called illegal?
I was very concerned in a private meeting that a number of us had with the Prime Minister of Israel that the newspaper would come out and make up a story that I would challenge him on settlements. That wasn't the purpose of the meeting. That's not what went on in the meeting. And I wanted to point out that it was an inaccurate statement. Now, the Israeli settlement policy, I think, has to be changed. And I think that it's inexcusable to build settlements outside the block areas that everybody recognizes will be part of Israel when there's a settlement for land. I think the outlying illegal settlements should be closed. And I did say that to Prime Minister Netanyahu when I met with him in Israel. But at that particular meeting, I didn't make that statement and didn't think it was right for somebody to write that I did.
Why not call for the acceptance of the Arab League peace plan, which would normalize relations with Israel in exchange for full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories?
Well, I don't think that the Arab League peace plan is clear enough that Israel would withdraw from territories and with whom they would make peace. The Palestinians are going through a civil war. Hamas's reason for being is to destroy Israel. The Fatah organization, we have high hopes that they'll be willing to make peace, but they've never said that they're willing to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And so Israel doesn't have a partner for peace. I wish she did, and the United States is going to try to promote that peace.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Amy Goodman, the Thanks for joining us.